Hey guys, Lewis here from SwapHelper.com, Nintech Corporation, with an unboxing of our new product, the Column Helper. We're going to go over a few things, including what's in the box, some functionality things, and then I'm going to show you how it installs, and then we'll also show it in the truck. So this is our newest product. This allows you to run a 2008 to 2016 column in your 99 to 07 swap truck. 11 to 16 will require a retrofit to the 2008 to 2010 multifunction switch, which we multifunction switch, clock spring, and housing. So we'll be doing a video on that next, which we should release here in the next few days. All the pre-order customers, your orders have shipped. You should have received your tracking numbers. Regular ordering is open on the website. So without making y'all wait any longer, let's go ahead and open the box. This will give you an idea of what you're going to receive. First, you're going to have the instructions. So these are full color, 14-page instructions, and we'll go over those in a minute. Obviously, you have the column helper itself, solid state, silent blinkers. It has the high power stuff with the relays, which we'll get to. Does the cruise adaptation, HVAC, full interval control for all the wipers for 99 to 01 trucks and excursions. We have our clips that we use to attach it to the dash frame. You have your spade connectors that come in two separate sizes, and we include a few extra of each one in case you have any issues and you need a spare. You have some for the smaller wires and some for the larger ignition wires. You're going to get a full pack of shrink wraps, or two different sizes. One is for basically the I believe there's 12 over here. They're going to be for the larger ignition wires. These are going to be for all the other wiring. You have your harness, which is included, and as we usually do, everything is labeled individually on each wire. It includes a USB cable for diagnostics and for later upgrades if we decide to release an update or an upgrade or change functionality. We have our relays. So you're going to use 7 relays. These are high quality OEM grade relays. We include one spare that you can throw in your glove box in case of a field failure, even though I think it's going to be very low probability. These are really high quality relays, and they should outlast your truck. Also on the back side here, you'll see on the column helper we include the labeling stickers, and just like our other products that have a lot of wires, we include these so that you can wire each wire before you cut anything or do anything. And it'll indicate what it's for, where it can be found and all that, which is also in the instructions. So let's go ahead and get this opened up, and we'll go over this. Okay, so the first thing I've opened up is the column helper bag. So as I was saying earlier, you have solid state blinkers here. So this is going to give you true tap to pass. There will be no noise. These solid state circuits have protection built into them for overcurrent, under voltage, over voltage, all those kinds of things, and they have an indicator light for each one, and these will blink out an error code. Basically, you have left front, left rear, right front, right rear. We developed our own solid state driver in-house specifically for this application to basically safely and with good endurance provide solid state blinker action, which is a difficult thing to implement. For the real high power circuits, specifically the ignition and the headlights, we opted to go with automotive relays. They provide phenomenal isolation, and in circuits like this, after looking at it, that's going to be the best approach. And like I said, you've got your high quality relays that are going to go there. This is going to mount under the dash in this configuration up against the dash frame. I'm going to bring a dash frame in here in a minute and show you how this mounts. And the connector will come out and head into the dash so that you can do your wiring. All the circuits are labeled here, so and then you have a wire legend that shows like 99 to 01 would be an asterisk, and then basically the little arrow is 02 to 07. So like both 99 to 01 and 02 to 07 will have yellow, so you'll see there's an asterisk and an arrow, so that means, okay, you have yellows. For instance, you get over here, light green violet has an asterisk, so that's 99 to 01, but in 02 to 07, it's dark blue orange, and it has a little arrow to indicate that it's for 02 to 07. We also have the circuit numbers there in case you want to cross-reference diagrams. And that's continued all the way throughout on all these different wires. And we're going to, we'll have on the website, you should be able to download connector diagrams as an appendix to the instructions should you need them. But you know, this stuff will be found in your original truck harness. So you have basically these four the solid state indicator LEDs, and then you have one main status LED, and what it's going to indicate is what mode the column helper is in, whether it's in 8 to 10 cruise adaptation mode, or if it's in 11 to 16 cruise adaptation mode, depending on which column you're running. So we'll show you some of this functionality in the truck. It does have a USB port. That's for the USB cable that we showed you earlier. And basically you can connect to this with a Windows-based laptop. We have an application we've written available on the website where you can connect and you can check the status of everything. You can also record diagnostic data, send it to us for review if you're having an issue we can't figure out. And also we can issue updates if there's something you know, that we decide to change the functionality, or we have an improvement or something of that nature. So moving along, also included in there is going to be the these labeling stickers. So they're all basically, you've got, I believe there's 5. So for instance, if you take this one, this is goes to the 08 to 16 column, and these are going to be your labels for the overdrive tow haul switch, the overdrive tow haul return, the shift interlock, and the shift interlock ground. The next one, for instance, and you basically take these off and wrap these around the wires. This is going to be for the ignition switch, and it has each individual labeling here, you know, key in ignition, ignition accessory, ignition run, and these will all tie together with either the column helper or the truck wiring, which we'll get to in a moment. So for instance, ignition start run, there will be a corresponding label on the column helper harness that says ignition start run for you to connect that to. This is also covered in the instructions, but I want to show you this specifically. So all those you will basically apply to your new ignition switch. This is the clock spring label. So this is going to be for the wiring coming out of your clock spring on your newer column. You know, again, it's got your illumination, cruise control input, cruise control, or the you know, the cruise input return, audio control, you know, all that kind of good stuff. And then this is going to be the truck wiring. So it's labeled truck wiring, and it's broken down 99 to 01, 02 to 07, what circuit it is, you know, front wiper washer, and all that kind of good stuff. Now, any one of these, the instructions are written in such a way that you can pick up any component, whether it's a column helper, you can pull up the column helper and reference a particular wire and see what it wires to in the instructions. You can pick up the clock spring and say, well, you know, if I wanted to, here, I'll actually pull it up in the instructions. So in the wiring legend, you have, for instance, the truck wiring, and let's just pick a random one. Let's say that you're on circuit 151 cruise control, which we have the label, it's light blue black in both 99 to 01 and 02 to 07. And then basically connects to, it says column helper, so you know it's going to connect to the column helper, 99 to 04 and 05 excursion, cruise control, 99 to 04. That's going to be the name of the sticker you're going to find, and it's position B3 green. If you have an 05, column helper 05 to 07 truck, you're going to connect to the cruise control 05 to 07, position C3 orange. So let's say instead you're looking at the clock spring and you're wondering, well, where does the cruise connect to? The cruise input return, let's say I'm on pin 14, green brown. I need to know where that connects to. Oh, okay, well that connects to the column helper, cruise input return, position H3 black. You know, and so basically you can go through the truck, you know, there's truck wiring, you have the column, the clock spring, multifunction switch, the column helper, same kind of deal. So let's say if you were looking at the other way around and you have the column helper, and you want to know what label cruise control 05-07 C3 orange goes to, it'll tell you the year. 05-07, it says it connects to the truck wiring, cruise control, circuit 151, light blue black. So basically you can pick up any part of your harness. You can pick up the truck wiring after you label it and figure out from that position what it wires to. You can pick up the column helper and figure out from its wiring harness what it needs to wire to. You can pick up the clock spring or the multifunction switch, and basically in any direction you're going, you'll be able to figure out and cross-reference with the instructions that we include what wires to what to get it all up and working. So we spend a lot of time on this basically to make it cross-reference as seamlessly as possible. We used the same names across the circuits and stickers so that it makes it as simple and as easy as possible to get that the wiring done. So to touch on a few things regarding doing the installation, first and foremost, you absolutely want to disconnect your battery. There are circuits that go into the column that can supply over 100 amps. So you definitely want to make sure you disconnect your battery. You don't want to have arcing or blowing fuses or anything like that. You know, as is usual with these kind of swaps, you know, the wires will need to be soldered. We include the shrink wraps and everything and some instructions on how to do it. If you're not comfortable with soldering, you may want to hire someone to do it. This is a swap that's going to need to happen with the dash out of the truck. It's very complicated to try to do it in the truck, considering the limited amount of room you have to work, and you'll end up with a cleaner install if you pull the dash out. And as a segue there, do not start this swap, you know, like it says here in the instructions, on Sunday afternoon when you need your truck Monday morning. You're going to want to give yourself enough time to make sure you can do this properly, wire everything properly, and get it up and rolling without issue, without being under a time crunch. And then lastly, do not plug the USB cable into a computer that's also connected to an inverter. Then the next thing you're going to come into is what's included in your column helper order. You may want to go through each one of these, just check everything off, make sure it's included. Obviously, we have quality control procedures in-house to make sure that everything's there, but you know, everything is assembled by humans. So this is what you should expect to receive inside your box. Then we move on to getting to know your column helper, which is pretty much what we've already done. You got your relay sockets, you have your solid state indicators for the blinkers, you have your main status LED, USB port, and all that kind of good stuff. There is a link to the swaphelper.com/columnhelper site, which is going to contain this video, the application. Eventually we'll have the retrofit video for the 11 to 16 columns, and so I highly recommend before you do anything, you go and you watch this video, which obviously you found, and review everything and read these instructions in their entirety before you start on anything. So so you have a QR code and the actual URL. So the mounting is explained, and like I said, I'm going to pull a dash frame over here and I will show you how it mounts. It goes over the relays, the solid state blinkers. Each solid state driver is capable of sourcing 33 amps on startup and continuously sourcing 7.5 amps, which, you know, a normal blinker pulls a couple of amps. So, you know, basically you could run more than that. It does say no inductive loads. Please do not run relays or motors off of the blinker circuits. They're not designed for that, and you will eventually degrade the circuits and have issues. So it also talks about the error codes. Basically, you know, if there is an issue, irrespective of how long the circuit is on, the solid state driver will stay awake long enough, basically for 9 seconds minimum, and blink out its air code. So if it's one blink, then you have an overcurrent condition. Basically, it's sourced in excess of 33 amps on startup or more than 7.5 amps continuously. 2 blinks is going to be an under voltage condition. Basically, the supply voltage is dropped below 3.5 volts on startup or 7.5 volts during continuing an operation. And 3 blinks is going to be over 22 volt overvolt condition, which will shut, any one of these will shut the circuit down. So so those are blinked out. So it talks about how to remedy those as well. The 11 to 16 multifunction retrofit, basically you're going to have to run the 8 to 10 multifunction switch, the clock spring housing, and you'll need the pigtail on the truck side. So we'll do a video on that, but there's a little bit covered here. And then using the 11 to 16 steering wheel buttons on an 8 to 10 wheel. So we cover how to do that, which this also covers if you're doing a 11 to 16 column, because you're essentially going to go through the 8 to 10 clock spring. So we cover basically how to repin the 8 to 10 clock spring connector. We're talking behind the airbag with the 11 to 16 steering wheel harness. So you can use, like for instance, if you're running a cluster helper, you'll have the directional buttons to be able to control the cluster. You have the cruise control. You'll be able to use the 11 to 16 cruise control and all that kind of good stuff. So regarding the airbag, for liability reasons, I'm sure you can understand we cannot provide guidance on retrofitting or changing the airbag or the associated wiring. You will have to figure that out on your own if that's something that you're going to attempt to do. Wiring considerations, we talk about the grounds. There are 2 grounds for the column helper that can be combined together and put on a ring terminal and attached to the dash frame. It says here basically make sure that if you paint your dash frame, that you clean the mounting point so that you have a good low impedance ground. We don't want, you know, high resistance ground that's going to cause an issue. Also covers if you don't use a particular wire, just use one of the included shrink wraps and cap it off. Then we have a walkthrough on how to solder the wires. In this particular application, you know, we would like you to solder everything. If you have a really high-end, precise automotive crimping system, you know, and can do, you know, naked crimp joints and all that, I mean, you're welcome to do that. But for most people, we want you to avoid using, you know, the O'Reilly's cheapo butt connectors and all that, because that in the past has turned into nothing but support issues for us. So a quick coverage on how to solder the wires together. Then we go over the spade connectors that are included, which we solder on. Look, again, if you have a high quality crimping system, you're welcome to crimp these, but in our experience that has led to nothing but support issues down the road with wires falling out of the crimps, because you need a specialized crimping tool if you're going to properly execute automotive crimps. So so we cover how to solder them and then put the included shrink wrap over them. One of the more important things here is the pre-drive inspection. So before you reconnect your battery or do anything after your installation, you want to make sure your vehicle, if it's an automatic, is in park. If it's a manual, that it's in neutral, in case you got any of the wires mixed up, like the starter circuit, things like that. You also want to set your parking brake, super important, just in case you were to mix wires up or anything like that. We don't want it to start in gear as a result of you flip-flopping the wires or something like that. And then it goes through like turning on the ignition and checking the status LEDs and all that. We also, because we have these solid state drivers to get the silent LEDs and to get the tap to pass and all that kind of good stuff, there is a limit, well, as there are with all circuits, a limit to how much current that they can source, and they're designed to source like I've mentioned earlier, 7.5 amps continuously, 33 amps on startup. If you connect the trailer, you want to inspect, as you should even without the column helper. Always inspect and make sure that your blinkers, your brake lights, all that stuff works before getting on the road. So just have somebody, you know, get behind the trailer, hit the brake lights, do the blinkers or the hazards, and confirm that everything is working properly before you hit the road. We talked about the 11 to 16 cruise button operation. You're looking at the 11 to 16 cruise buttons. They consolidated the on-off. The column helper handles all that for you. So basically, when you get in the truck and you start driving down the road, the first time you press the on-off button, it'll turn the cruise on. You can set your cruise, drive around, and then every time there subsequently from there on, while you're driving the truck, it will cycle between on and off. So let's say you have the cruise set, you're driving down the road, then you press it again, it'll turn it off. And of course, this whole process restarts when you start the truck up again. If you go pull over somewhere, get out of the truck, then go start it back up, get on the road, it'll basically, you press the button again and it'll cycle to on. Then we get into the wire legend, which we covered a little bit earlier, and goes through everything. One thing to mention here, 11 to 16 cruise mode, if you're going to run in that particular mode, all you do is connect the 11 to 16 select wire to ground. So you can wire that in with the other two grounds if you prefer, but any grounding point so that it will tell the column helper to go into 11 to 16 cruise adaptation mode. Otherwise, you can basically cap that wire off and then use the 8 to 10 buttons. So it goes through all the wiring. Quick note about the diagnostic software that I've already mentioned, the USB cable and the errata. Basically, if, you know, this being a complicated product, if we find a mistake or there's an issue, we may include a additional sheet explaining if there was an issue or a typo somewhere, and then you get into your technical specs and all that kind of good stuff, and your warranty and all that. So that's going through the instructions. What I'm going to do now is get a dash frame up here, and we will show you how the column helper itself mounts. Okay, so I'm back with a 2010 dash frame, and this is going to mount the same on a 2008 to 10 or an 11 to 16. For our purposes, where we're mounting, everything is the same between the two generations. So the column helper itself is going to mount here in this orientation. There's going to be a push pin that you're going to put in from this side and one from the bottom, and that will lock it into place. Now, one thing I will note is if you plan on running the upfitters or an inverter, you will need to mount them somewhere else in the dash swap. We worked really hard to try to come up with an orientation that worked for everything. We had an issue with, you know, if we put it one way, then you had a problem with the manual truck pedal, and a lot of work went into trying to make sure that we met every swap scenario that we could. Those two things can be relocated to the other side of the dash. There's a lot of room over on this side, but we didn't want to mount the column helper over there because we didn't want to require customers to extend, especially those high gauge wires for the ignition, you know, the thicker wires. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and open up this packaging. We include 4 clips. You only need 2, and we'll show you how it mounts. And then we'll go on to the next step of taking you out of the truck and showing you how stuff works. So let me get this opened up. Okay, so I've got the 2 push pins that we're going to use to install the column helper. Again, it goes in this orientation. What I'm going to do first is just take one, install it like that. Then you will set the column helper on there. Make sure you've got it at the right angle. It matches the... Okay, so there's one installed. Let's see if I can get down there and show you. So that's installed. The next one's going to come through from this side here. You can see the hole. And so we'll push that one through here. You can see it coming through the dash frame. Make sure it's all the way through. Boom. Okay, so now that's installed. Now, you may have some concerns. Oh, it's going to vibrate. Well, that's all going to dampen when you have the all the wires installed and the connector and everything. But it's a good solid mounting point. You can put your USB cable in here and wrap it up and leave it here. Basically the the dash skin comes off like this. You can leave that sitting there so you can access it at any time, either by removing this cover or the defrost cover over here, and pull it out and connect it to a laptop to, like I said, do upgrades or diagnostics or anything like that. So, and then the connector will connect here, you know, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get out in the truck. We'll go through some basics as far as operation, and show you the software, and then go from there. Okay, so here we are out with the 2001 development Excursion. I've got the relays in the column helper ready to be installed. Obviously, it's been installed in this truck for a while and has been in and out, so shouldn't take me long. Let me go ahead and get this plugged up, and then we'll go over functionality. Okay, so we're now ready to go ahead and start the truck up. You put the key in the ignition, you have accessory and then ignition, and you'll see here, let me go ahead and get started because it is hot here in Texas today. So today I'm running a 2008 to 2010 manual truck cluster. It does not have a range position area for it, and instead of the transmission temp, it has a voltmeter, and this also came out of a gas truck, so it doesn't have a turbo gauge. It has a oil pressure sensor, or oil pressure gauge. Regarding the security light, if you can see that blinking, we're going to be putting together a video on how to disable that. But now you're up and running with the column helper, which does the ignition and everything. Like I said, you also get like the tap to pass. And I don't know, it may be hard to hear with the air conditioning and everything going, but it is they're truly silent. The only blink you hear is the faux blink when you actually do the blinkers. There's no you know, relay clicking or anything like that. They are truly solid state. So like when you turn on the hazards, or if you know, like I said, you can do the tap, and you just do it that way to tap to pass. It'll do, you know, the blink just like the newer trucks do, and all that kind of good stuff. Obviously you have like your flash to pass, the headlights, all that kind of stuff work, the high beams, which do not turn on until the headlights are on, just like OEM. So if you turn that on, and then if I turn the, so now you can see the, may be able to see, I know it's pretty bright out here, but the headlight indicator is on, or the high beam indicator, and of course when you shut it off, it turns off, and all that kind of good stuff. The wipers, it's going to be kind of tough because it's so dry, but I don't want to do this a bunch on my windshield. But basically you have the intervals now. You see, like, there's a medium interval, go to a little bit faster one, we can go to the even faster. I don't want to scratch my windshield doing this over and over, but you get the point. For 99 to 01, you've got full interval control. Right now, I've got 11 to 16 buttons in the wheel. This clock spring, well, the steering wheel harness has been repinned for the 11 to 16 harness, so that way we can use the 11 to 16 cruise control. So I'll take a little cruise down the road and show you that. That's handled by the column helper, so we can use the newer cruise. You can use 8 to 10 or 11 to 16. That's where that 11 to 16 connect comes into play. Now, one thing I want to show you is with the laptop. Let me get the laptop plugged in and pulled up, and then I'll show you the diagnostic software. Okay, so here we are with the laptop connected. Let's go ahead and zoom in on the screen and go through the column helper diag software. So y'all may remember from the cluster helper launch, the cluster helper diag tool. Well, we have a similar one for the column helper diag tool. So you can open it up, connect, select the COM port, hit connect, and then you'll immediately get the status on everything that's going on here. So ignition is on. The column helper is in 11 to 16 mode, since we're running 11 to 16 buttons. Like if I hit the brakes, you'll see the brake lamp input is on, and the turns on the left and rear, I'm sorry, left rear and right rear blinkers or brake lamps. For instance, if you turn the blinkers on, you see the multifunction input for the left blinker turns on. But for instance, you can turn it off and it shows that the input is turned off, but the blinkers are continuing to blink. The cruise control, for instance, this being 11 to 16, it cycles through on and off each time you press it. Set minus, set positive, all that kind of good stuff. We don't have an HVAC install in this truck because this is an 01, but the column helper is capable of adapting the HVAC buttons as well. The wipers, don't want to run them a whole bunch because it's dry out here, but you can go through each interval. You can get the washer, all that kind of good stuff. Oops, I'm gonna turn those off. You'll notice that you have your serial number here. That way we can follow from point of sale if there's any questions, issues, things like that. And then we can, if there's an issue that we can't figure out, working over the phone or whatever the case may be, basically you can hit log packets. This will log information in the status log output window for approximately 10 seconds. And then you can hit copy to clipboard, and then you'll be able to paste that into an email and send that to us, and we can actually look at the data from the column helper and see what's going on. The next thing you can do is if we issue an update or a change in functionality, we send out an encrypted flash file for you to be able to update a .swp file. You go ahead and open it, and then you can send the update. Okay, and this is now updating the column helper, and boom, it's back alive again. Now that didn't change versions or anything because we're just loading the same flash onto it that it already had. So that's pretty much it for the software. This will help diagnose issues in the field, help you see what's going on and what status everything is in. The last thing I'd like to touch on is the 11 to 16 cruise. So we're gonna back out of the laptop and then we're gonna go for a drive, and I'm gonna walk you through that. Okay, so we're driving now. We got the 11 to 16 buttons. Basically, they just cycle through. So you hit on and then set plus, and now the cruise control is set. And then the next time that you press the on-off button, it will cycle to off. So now it's off. You can hear the vehicle slowing down. Hit it again. Hit set positive. Now the cruise control is set again. And we can actually speed up a little bit using the cruise. And that's the functionality. So, and even if you leave it in the off position or the on position, the next time you turn the vehicle off and then back on, it'll start over. So the first time you press it, it'll be on, and then you just hit set positive, set negative, and it will set the cruise control. So, so that's pretty much it. We appreciate everybody who placed pre-orders and everybody who ordered on launch day and going forward. If you guys have any questions during your install, feel free to shoot us an email, contact@swaphelper.com, and we'll work to get you taken care of. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate it.